Check, check. Sweet. Sounds good. Let's get into it. Hope you all are doing well on this Friday. Just checking the lag from where I'm live. Awesome. So, welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. Today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin, some big things happening within the crypto world. Bitcoin is doing something very important, and that is it is breaking out of this descending channel. Now, you can see there's a couple moments, or one moment before, where it had a little tiny wick above. Good afternoon, Dr. 420. But we are wicking above once again. So we will see if this time we are going to truly break out of this descending channel that we have hit once, twice, three, four, five. This is the sixth time. Could this be the time that Bitcoin finally breaks out of the descending channel? This gray line is the former all-time high from 2021. And obviously, we have this ascending trend line as well. I think breaking above of both of these together would be very bullish. And I'd be looking at Bitcoin revisiting somewhere around the 72K level if Bitcoin can break above here. So on the daily, right now, this wick looking pretty good. We'll take a look at a few indicators to see if this is a move we should be cautious of. Because as I like to say, we have to be cautious when there is greed. And so far, CNN, we were in extreme greed earlier this week. Pie vesting, we are in extreme greed, above 81%, my God. And for crypto, you can see we're pretty close to extreme greed as well, up into high greed. So should crypto get into that 70K range, I have no doubt that we will then show a reversal of the fear and greed index. You see how we've been in a downtrend since the top in March. And then we started forming this base with higher lows. No higher highs yet, even still. But should Bitcoin get above 70K, I believe that will confirm a trend reversal. Not to say that we can't get another dip in the meantime, because I believe that Bitcoin dominance still has a little bit of room to move up. We'll get into that too. But overall, this is looking pretty good for Bitcoin. Let's go through a couple other market indicators before we get truly into all the crypto stuff for today. Something to keep in mind is that election year seasonality, typically October into early November. You can see late October, right before we have the election, tends to be a very volatile time in the markets. And so we really haven't seen volatility outside of the yen carry trade unwind in August. So overall, for all the election year volatility as promised, we really only had that one spike. And again, if you want to take a look at volatility on the charts, you just type in the VIX. We did get up into volatility level around 25, but nothing as high as back here. And by the way, that volatility spike, if you can believe this, third biggest volatility spike, including the great financial crisis and the 2020 bottom. The S&P went down about 10%. And speaking of other Fed factors, keep in mind, we'll keep talking about this. I believe so far we are following this dark green line. And you can see here that going into rate cuts, on average, there's about a 10% decline in the markets. And we had that, again, in August, the yen carry trade. S&P is in all-time high area right now. But again, we have extreme greed in the stock markets. And so I want to take a look at stocks before crypto, because if stocks are in extreme greed, are we possibly topping or creating a local top before having a healthy pullback? Because everyone's quick to say Q4 is bullish, Q4 is bullish. Yes, that's true. But maybe we're going to have one more pullback. One last thing I'll say about some of these government Fed indicators. Talked about that when the Fed is cutting big and fast, there are bigger problems in the market that tend to be around the corner. 1998 is a sell scenario I believe we are in, maybe combined with a little bit of the 1970s. So the Fed, yes, they cut by 50. Don't focus on the 50 number as much because they're not doing any cuts this month. They don't meet this month. So cutting by 50 in September is just an average of 2 25 basis point cuts. And in November, we will see what happens, especially with the unemployment rate. Unemployment went down a little bit. Inflation's gone down a little bit on the metrics. And so why would the Fed have more reason to cut? They might even pause or only do a couple more 25 basis point cuts until pausing. Once they pause, it tends to be very bullish. Let's go over to the alt season index. You guys can see we're still chopping up higher highs, higher lows, but we haven't gotten one of these big alt season spikes. I'm waiting for that to happen. Maybe that's coming around the corner. Bitcoin rainbow chart, subscribe if you're interested in that. We've been in between the still cheap accumulate zone, the green and the teal zone. You guys can see here that around the halving, and we just had that halving, let's take a look at what has happened from a peak to a low. You can see the first halving, it went down just from one zone to the next, only 2 zones. Same thing in the second halving. It just went down a couple zones. Third halving, we went down quite a few. There was that mid-cycle top, and we went down 1, 2, 3. You could say 3 to 5 zones. I'm going to say 3 and went from yellow to low here because there was the black swan event being COVID. But overall, the average these 2 times, we only went down 2 zones. And that's about what's happened as we've gone down from middle of the yellow to middle of accumulate. So maybe the bottom's already in. Again, not to say we can't get decent size pullbacks. So let's go take a quick look at what the stock market's doing. Stock market overall very bullish on the weekly. Again, we're looking very extended. Let's take off our buy sell signal indicator and let's take a look at a couple other indicators to see if maybe we're forming a high here. You can see the MACD. You can look at this somewhat like the RSI. The height of the MACD is starting to roll over a little bit. The moving average convergence, divergence. Also, before we get to the RSI, let's take a look at the stochastic. Okay, we have the stochastic rolling over on the daily. You guys can see what's happens before. Now, again, we don't know how big of a pullback. It's just showing that maybe that's getting ready to roll over. Lastly, the RSI is one of my favorites for finding tops and bottoms. And you can see here that overall there is some bearish divergence. We have this peak back here, and then it's a little bit low over here, higher price, lower peak. That's bearish divergence. Let's go over to crypto. What do we got for crypto as far as divergence? So this is something I'm keeping a close eye on, is on the daily. Where is this RSI peak going to finish? If it finishes higher, I think that's very bullish for Bitcoin. But if it finishes right around where it's at, then it is possible we get one more decent sized pullback, maybe somewhere in the low 60 range, and then continue up higher. Let's move on to the percent of stocks above the 200-day. And overall, it's a little elevated. It's not going to be as elevated as 21, in my opinion. But still, maybe you'll see it get up closer to 70. It would not surprise me to see this pull back a little bit. As far as the yield curve inversion, important thing to keep track of, because when we uninvert, the bottom typically tends to be around 2 years later. What's in 2 years? 2026. And where have the bottoms been for crypto? Well, we've been having these 4-year cycles, and we've had bottoms in 2012, 2016. You can see here 2018, the bottom. 2022, we're going up by 4s. So that might line up. 2026, the yield curve is pretty much undefeated in calling future recessions. So late 25, 26, that might be when we see the next low, give or take 6 months, of course. But typically, in the past, that's what's called the bottom. And I'll show you here on the chart, just from the .com bubble to the eventual bottom. You guys can see right here, we'll measure it out. that from the uninversion, did I click it? Thought I clicked it. From the uninversion, 518 days to the eventual market bottom. From the inversion, 630 days. So about 2 years. Unemployment, this is a big reason why things have been so bullish. Let's zoom way in here. Let's put it on log. Unemployment, it did have that tick down, but overall it is in an uptrend. I believe we get the next updated numbers for unemployment early November before the election, and that will probably have a big effect on the markets. So if unemployment ticks up again, which is the way I'm leaning, then I wouldn't doubt seeing a correction again, late October, early November. It might start to get priced in even earlier. Sometimes all the people with the big money tend to get a hold of this data a little early. So we'll see what happens. But again, any of these moves the Fed makes, the Fed making a 50 base point cut, all these things the Fed does have a lagging effect. It takes a while for these things to truly have an impact. Chips and salsa, welcome. Always good seeing you. Yo, Doge is not pissing me off right now. Yeah, I saw Doge. I think it got somewhere to like 13 cents. We talked about it breaking out of its downtrend. We'll get into Doge in a little bit. But before I was talking about inflation, I just wanted to show you guys a couple things again to just, for any of you rewatching, again, if we're making guesses on what the market's going to do later and trying to make informed decisions based off that, we have to take a look at the data. Again, the Fed's talked about wanting the magic 2% inflation number. You can see inflation came down again. So if inflation's coming down, if unemployment's going down, they have no reason to keep cutting. If anything, that probably means they're going to hold or raise rates sooner than later. And then if we take a look at, I believe it's here we go, U.S. interest rates. What I've been talking about is the 1998 style scenario, that when the Fed cut rates by 25 base points in 98, look at this. We all know there's the dot-com bubble, and when they were cutting big and fast, that was the beginning of the end for that bull run. But in 1998, when they first started cutting, you can see right here, they didn't cut too far, and then they paused, and then they had to start raising rates. I wonder if we're going to be in a style scenario like this, where there's still maybe another year or so left for the markets to continue higher. So again, 1998, I put these red lines here to show where those cuts were. Here the cut was at the bottom, and as you can see, it still went up for, we'll try to get somewhere around the peak, 708 days. Yeah, I guess you could say 553. That looks like the true top. The second time they're cutting rates by 50 base points, that was here. So when they started cutting big and fast, the market already was touching the 100-week moving average, as it was back here too. We haven't really had anything like that recently. Even with the yen carry trade out unwind, and when the markets got very volatile, we only got to near the 50-week moving average. So the market's very extended right now. And as you can see here, again, bearish divergence. That is massive bearish divergence. Okay, but these things take a while to play out. So all because someone says bullish bearish divergence doesn't mean it has to happen anytime soon. Things can stay elevated for a while. And again, with Bitcoin, let's take the RSI off. I think we've made the point. We've been in this descending channel, and as we go to the daily, big news today. You can see that Bitcoin is trying to break out of that descending channel. It has wicked above, so it's still possible that this is a fake out. It's still possible. I hope not. But you can see right here, it is wicking above that descending channel. And maybe we are finally going to get above there and start to settle in around the 70K area. And if that is true, just going back to the last cycle, because there's some comparisons to the last cycle that fit, some that don't. Last cycle, there was the top and the Fed rate cuts kind of coincided. This time, not the case. We had the top in March and the Fed rate cuts in September. So that's a little bit different. You can see Bitcoin got down to the 50 and the 100-week moving average. And guys, this is the last good time to buy. Anytime Bitcoin was near the 50 and the 100. before it started moving on up. Okay. But once it broke this downtrend, you can see we had this little blip up and then, of course, COVID crash. So I'm assuming this wouldn't have happened without COVID. Again, who knows? But once Bitcoin broke this downtrend, we'll just draw a trend line to prove that point. Once it broke out, you can see the date here, January 2020. Okay, where is January 21? Right over here. We were about a year from the top. Now, if that holds true, if we are about a year from the top by breaking our current mid-cycle top downtrend, that would put us right in line with what's happened before. And that's been the 4-year cycle. The 4-year cycle where we top late in the year of the post-halving year. So November, December 2013, November, December 2017, November, December 21. Is it going to be November, December 25? Again, I've been talking about that orange box. The orange box is being the case, and you can see the one orange box around 150K, the other one it goes as high as 250K. Now, we did have this double top last time, and in my opinion, this was the true top because we had alt season in this top as well. Yes, some alts went here, but most of the alts, as far as what I know, is also Bitcoin dominance topped in here. And so I've been looking more for a 4-year cycle somewhere around March or April. In my opinion, that's what I'm leaning towards. But again, I don't care about predictions and being right with predictions as much as I do making money. And here in this channel, I want to look at, as a market psychologist, as someone who works in the field of psychology, we want to take a look at our biases and we want to answer the essential question, is now a good time to buy or is now a good time to sell? And overall, if you're just comparing this to last cycle, we probably don't have too long of decent areas to buy, at least with altcoins or Bitcoin. Bitcoin might 2 or 3x. We have Doge that Chips and Salsa loves talking about every time I do a video. Appreciate you. We have things like Doge. Maybe some of the top altcoins are only going to do somewhere around a 3 to 5x. Okay. But then there's potential for some altcoins as you go to lower market caps to possibly do a 10x, maybe a 20x, if you hit on the right ones further down. Things like Fetch have already done well above that. So if it still makes me laugh, there's altcoins completely useless that have the most random names. Like how is there nearly $3 billion in dog whiff hat? Anyways, I digress. So if you're picking the right altcoins, got to be ready. And again, if they're meme coins, they may have already run. So you don't want to buy if the value's not there. Okay, do your own research. Going over to Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance is over 59%. It got as high as, well, there it says 59%. Let's zoom way in. What has been the absolute peak? Yeah, 59.1. I've talked about, well, 2 important things about Bitcoin dominance. One, last 2 cycles when it tanked to the low 40%, which took a month the first time, a month and a half the second time. So maybe it's going to take around that time, a month to a month and a half or 2 months. I don't know. But when that happens, that is go time. And if you pick the right alts, they're going to do great. Now, I've talked about getting maybe as high as 61.5% to 62%. Reason being, and there's not much to this, but if you look where the peaks are, let's take these moving averages off just for a moment. If you take a look to where the peaks were, and again, I'm just drawing a comparison. This can be wrong, but you go to the left. When Bitcoin dominance in the 2017 cycle really fell off and then had a good bounce up the first time, this coincided with the top later in 2021 or the top before the 21 cycle. So I'm just using that same logic that going into the 2021 cycle when Bitcoin first fell off and stabilize, and you can see here it lines up with a couple other areas as we go further back. It's right around 62%. So there just seems to be a lot showing that 62%. As you can see, the low here for dominance in that cycle before it truly fell was right at 57%. So I've been making the case that we have this horizontal trend line here, this descending trend line here from the peak. Where they both converged is exactly where Bitcoin dominance broke up, which is very interesting to me. And so, if all things being equal, like last time, then I'm seeing this 61, 62% area as a top target. Now, that doesn't have to happen, but I will make the argument that we are in the range we need to be before Bitcoin dominance can roll over and we can see amazing opportunities to make money in the world of crypto. Again, if you pick the right altcoins and Bitcoin miners, any of those types of assets. If you're on the right ones, I'd say now is the time. We're in this range where it can be go time very soon. And for any of you watching, if there are any coins or miners you are in that you would like for me to take a look at during this live stream, please type them below. Appreciate all you guys being here. Another chart that's important to look at, and that's the tether dominance. We have to take it off log though. And tether dominance has hit these levels every time there's been a local top. 2017 top, and yes, I know my trend line's not perfect. 2019 mid-cycle top, the top before COVID, the double top, and the most recent mid-cycle top. So showing you where that is on the macro chart. This was the 2017 top, mid-cycle top, top before the COVID dump, double top, the mid-cycle top this time. Again, going over here, that's what each of those times it tags the trend line has happened. And so something to look for is if this current trend line where we're making higher lows is getting ready to break down. Now you can see there's this wedge formation starting to happen. We have higher lows, lower highs. So something is getting ready to happen here. Now again, Bitcoin has broken out of that descending channel just a little bit right now. It's still in fake out territory or possible fake out territory. I'd say even it could go even to somewhere in the low 70,000s and still be that way, at least on the weekly. But if that happens, then we might see it roll over here. And another indicator, just something else to watch for, is that on the weekly, this works best for the weekly, that when the RSI is rolling or getting under the 50 mark on the weekly and can stay there, that tends to be a good area for a top, at least when we're close to the trend line. So here we had the top, stayed under 50, but we've gone above. So anytime we're staying very low on the RSI, there's room for us to stay down on this trend line and possibly go to higher prices in Bitcoin. So if we hit this trend line, but the RSI is still somewhere up here, we might continue to the peak a little longer. I hope I outlined that well enough for you guys. Let's go over to Ethereum. Then we'll get into Doge for my boy Chips and Salsa. Ethereum, it's been crawling up this trend line. We talked about this, how it's at good value. Let's turn on our EMA. We have our 50, 100, dark blue 200. Let's put on our stochastic RSI. Because on the weekly, I talk about that when we are down in this area and the blue gets above the orange, in my opinion, that's a good time to dollar cost average in. Not financial advice for you, but I try to take a look at the most simple ways to look at charts each week for my handful of cryptos or stocks. And a couple things I look for. Well, there's the buy sell signal I told you guys about. This indicator right here. In a bear market, I prefer this one, the UT bot alerts. I also prefer the stochastic RSI. Okay, within reason now. If we are already at elevated levels, you have to make your own decision there. But overall, dollar cost averaging in, when we flip up, when we're also oversold, I guess you could say, in the stochastic RSI, overall not a bad area. You can see Ethereum sticking with the 100-week moving average and possibly getting ready to go back up. I think maybe we'll put on this buy-sell signal just to look clean. So right here, you can see second buy signal on the weekly for Ethereum. Maybe we're truly getting ready to blast out of here. Let's go over to Doge. Hearing good things about Doge. Let's see where it's at. Oh, yeah. So we talked about this, I believe, last week before, where Doge has been in this descending channel. Maybe it's easier to look on the daily. Here we go. It's been in this descending channel, broke up, retested it, and I said, it might retest it, and that's okay. We just want to make sure it doesn't go back under. Chips and Salsa can vouch for me. He'll remember me saying that. We also have these higher lows. And look at this. Doge getting back up to the macro 382. We'll see what happens here, but that's right at around 14 cents. I'm sure there's going to be some profit taking from the traders. But the next area that Doge truly has to get through is this 0.5. You can see a little bit of fake out here. On the weekly, you would see more of that. And this is what I'm talking about with wicks, guys. In my opinion, a fake out is when we don't have a candle body closing consistently above the lines we want to get to. And so here at the 0.5, that's a good area. That's right around 19 cents. If Doge can stay up there, then it's go time for Doge. Now, something to consider, and I'm going to keep saying this just so you guys are careful. I'm not saying this will happen, but this can happen. I've been in this market since 2017, made great money each cycle, or in these two cycles, but I won't forget that last time how XRP, Bitcoin Cash, many other 2017 altcoins disappointed because they only got up to the macro 786 fib. The fib tool is right here. You draw from the high to the low. The peak was only to the 786. And yes, it wicked above a little bit, but that's it. Okay, you can see right there. And so my message to all you guys is, one, I hope whatever you have money in, crypto-wise, does great. But maybe consider taking initial investment profits around the 786, just in case it doesn't break up higher and make new all-time highs. If it does make new all-time highs for you, which I hope it does, whether it's XRP, Doge, whatever, you can take your fib, macro fib off log scale. Again, you draw high to low, and you see those extensions of targets. Now, the targets have to be within reason. So in the world of crypto YouTube and crypto Twitter or X, people like to throw out ridiculous claims of any asset going to some crazy number. And if you calculate the market cap isn't even feasible. And yes, market cap is a real thing that exists. You can't ignore it. It's this number right here. So for any of you people who are new to watching, something to remind yourselves of is that all because a crypto has a low number does not mean it is worth less or that it is cheaper. Okay, you can see Doge has a higher market cap than Toncoin that has a higher price. Okay, Doge is not cheaper than Toncat. You have to look at the market cap. Last time the top altcoins by market cap, they were getting 50 to 100 billion. So this time around, top performing altcoins, my guess would be 1 to 200 billion if you pick the right ones. Again, I don't know what those ones will be. I believe the top altcoin this time around that'll be talked about is Solana. It's already held up strength pretty much better than any other large cap altcoin there is. And so we had XRP be the best coin in 2017. We had Doge really steal the show in 2021. I believe this time around it's going to be Solana. That might also mean that Doge disappoints this time around, along with any other altcoin that did very well. One altcoin in 2021. One altcoin I'm worried about possibly doing that is Link. I love Chainlink. I think it's a great high market cap altcoin. It's one I hope does very well. But again, this is one that has already done well in cycles before, so maybe it only gets up to the 786. Make your plan right now while alts are down here before they 5, 10x or whatever, before Bitcoin dominance tanks to the low 40 percentile. Make your plan right now on where you are going to take profits, because what happens is, this happened the last two cycles. I was guilty of this in the first cycle, is that when Bitcoin dominance tanks and everything's ripping up, if you are in one of these coins and it does 100, 200x, you feel euphoric. It's hard to think because you're being emotional. And we want to talk about this in market psychology. You want to be smart when greed is in the market. When there's extreme greed, you want to have a plan you can follow. And the best time to make a plan is when you're thinking without your emotions. Talk about this with clients of mine all the time. Making a plan when you are calm. So you're using that frontal lobe of yours, not your limbic system, making emotional decisions. So make your plan now. I held on to Tron, even though I got something like a 200x. I forget, still made great money, but I was an idiot and I didn't sell when I should have. I got greedy. Last time, Doge, you guys probably heard, you can Google it. There's the Doge millionaire, a guy who was going to have millions. He thought it was going to keep going up. He didn't take profits when he had the chance. So do have an exit plan. I hope you guys do your homework and make your exit plans now. Literally write it down, type it up. Whatever coins, stocks you are in, set your price targets. Not financial advice, but set your price targets. And again, we have this wonderful chart that has worked before. Hopefully it'll work again. That when Bitcoin dominance tanks, that shows us a good time to consider taking profits. Now, from the bottoms, is Bitcoin dominance only going to go to the mid 40%? I don't know. But once it gets under this 47% level here, we'll see. And if my coins or my crypto stocks hit their targets, I don't care if it goes up another 10, 20%. I'm going to be taking profits and leaving. Since we've been talking about mining stocks, let's look at some of them. Marathon Digital Holdings. Let's zoom in a little bit. You can see here, a couple big buy signals on the weekly making higher lows. Again, we have this descending wedge that it has been in currently. But once it breaks out of this, it's just hanging around the 0.5 fib. Once Mara breaks out, boom. And some of these mining stocks last time around had a market cap range of 20 to 30 billion for the best ones. So this time around, I'm looking at 30 to 50 billion. Again, we've had inflation. It doesn't mean they're worth more. Our dollars are worth less. And so our targets should be higher. Market cap still exists though. These idiots who say XRP is going to 10K, that literally cannot happen unless we have Venezuelan, Argentinian inflation, hyperinflation, and that's not going to happen. XRP is not going to have a market cap of $500 trillion. If anyone says that, you need to unfollow them, unsubscribe from them. They have brain rot. They're in a cult. Okay? That's just the harsh truth. And if you own XRP, I do hope you make money, but let's be realistic with your expectations. I'm not one of those crypto stock YouTubers who is trying to steer you guys wrong. I would not feel good about doing that. I don't know how these other people have consciously do that and think it's okay. Riot, you can see Riot has moved up very well, but it has some resistance. Right at around the 382, it has the 100-week moving average, got up to the 50-week moving average. So if Riot can continue, it's got to retake that 382. Again, in the comments, if you have any requests, please type them below. I am happy to look at any stocks, crypto stocks, or altcoins, especially ones on Coinbase. Look at those with you. IMX, gaming token that I think has some good potential, creating some higher lows. And it has a buy signal here and a doji. So IMX looking pretty good. Last time, I don't know if you guys remember, if you were in the last cycle, there was a gaming token. It took off. It's called Axie Infinity, I believe. That one was the gaming token of 2021. I believe IMX has that potential. We'll see. Fetch.ai, it has AI in the name, so people love it. Maybe it's settling in kind of around the all-time high it created way back in 21. It seems to be a level that it likes. But if it falls lower, gets anywhere around 60, low 60s, I think Fetch is a good play. We talk about Solana a lot as far as what Solana can do. Solana, like I said, it's been holding up strength better than other altcoins. It's not the same chart as XRP or Doge. Again, I hope you guys make money from those. But for people with big money, they rather see charts like this because there's a reason other altcoins, other charts are way down here. And that's because there's not as much volume going into it, holding it up. There isn't so much profit taking that it tanks the asset. So it's staying up here at the 786 at around 123. And Solana, we talked about on this channel before how, a number that's been thrown out there is 1,000 SOL. And you can see the 3618 and the 4236 between 920 and 1080. 1,000 SOL would put this around somewhere. You can see it's at a $73 billion market cap. And it would put it around, I believe, a $500 billion market cap. Let me do a quick calculation on that. So let's just say 1,000 divided by 155. That's 6.5. You take 6.5 times 73 billion. Yeah, that's $470 billion. So 470 billion for a market cap for the top altcoin, I could see that. Again, outside of Ethereum. Outside of Ethereum, I think this cycle, Solana has that potential. So if Solana does a 6.5x, and that's the top alt, what other new alts might do pretty well this time around too? Near Protocol, Pepe, is Pepe the new Doge? Now is the time to do your research and make those choices because we're probably running out of time. As I said before, if this cycle holds true in comparison to prior cycles, we may only be a year away. Okay, so December of 2017, where was that? Okay, you can see this is when it truly started breaking up. This is when it had a year. We had April 21. When was April 2020? Okay, let's go back to the Bitcoin chart right here. Even considering, I've talked about how the break of the all-time high, whether or not COVID happened. But even considering COVID, if we just let's do a parallel channel. Why not? Even if we consider what happened with COVID here as part of this downtrend that, we got above, came back down. Even when it broke out around COVID, look at that. April 2020, there was a year left. So I've been on the record saying many times, I'm leaning towards a March, April top, but can't ignore what's happened in the past, that once it broke out of that downtrend around the halving, the top was a year later. Let's take a look at 2016, 2017. So 2017, we had the top there in December. Where was December? It was right over here. You can just see how much more bullish this is. So here was the halving. Here was the downtrend right here. We have to zoom way in. That was truly the last major downtrend. October 2016. I guess that was a year. From there to the top. You could call this a decent downtrend too, but I'd say this one, the white line's the halving, by the way. So halving downtrend, again, that was about a year away. So maybe we have some signs pointing towards a 4-year cycle that could finish late next year. I am open to it. Okay. Again, we have to take the data and consider all possibilities. Another factor, and I'm going to keep going to this, is that you can see I took the fib off log scale. We have the 1618 at around 101K. We have the Bitcoin double top peaks pointing right to here where that 101K mark is, the 1618. We have this trend line Bitcoin's been in love with since the bottom, pointing up to that same area. It's this one. And we also have this green line. When a new all-time high is made, which happened right before the halving, that's the L line. When a break of the former all-time high happens and a new all-time high is made, the peak on average is 300 days away. That peak would put us at the end of this year, the date, right at the end of this year, December 30th, 2024, and that all lines up. Okay, now I've said, sure, that's a possibility, but let's consider other timing factors. When you take the average from the very bottom to the next peak, that puts us in March, middle of March next year. Again, when we're just taking different timing averages from different cycles and averaging them out. Okay. The average from the bottom to the next peak, 850 days. So again, bottom to next peak, it would put us around here. But again, we're taking the average from every cycle. Okay. This March 25 would be a 4-year cycle from what we had here in 21. Again, are we going to get a 4-year cycle around there? Maybe. I don't know. If you take the average from each halving to the next peak, it's 484 days. That puts us out in August. So there hasn't been a lot to say outside of just the date being late November, December of every post-halving year to say that we're going to get a 4-year cycle. The only thing saying that is that's what's happened before. And in my opinion, that's not good enough. You have to consider the other data. So what I've said is watch what happens in here. And if we start to break up, is Bitcoin going to be around 100K at the end of this year? I hope so. We'll see. But then what's going to happen at the 1618? Is Bitcoin dominance still going to be elevated? Or is it going to drop early? Again, I do not know. But these are factors to consider as we move forward. I don't want to get caught in the prediction game and saying this will happen. Being right or wrong on your predictions does not frickin' matter. All that matters is having a solid strategy, considerate of risk, that'll help you make money. That is the essential question I try to answer daily on this channel. And I also try to examine the collective bias. Emotionally, we have to use emotions to our advantage, because when greed is high in the markets, whether stocks and crypto, we have to be increasingly cautious. Now, greed can last for a while. Same with fear. When greed was accumulating, if you will, up here in December 2020, when Bitcoin was breaking the 2017 all-time high, the top didn't come till down here. So again, greed can stay up here for a while. We spiked up into the March top. We spiked down into the August yen carry trade unwind. Okay, what's going to happen here? Is this just another lower high? Or are we getting ready to break up? It's been kind of crazy in the world of crypto. Each time's a little bit different. Another factor I wanted to talk about, at least in today's video and in future videos, is examining, and I hear myself saying this, and so this is why I want to name it out loud, examining a self-fulfilling prophecy. What can happen, and I'm being cautious of this because I'm hearing myself say this, is when you say something so many times, you start to convince yourself it's going to happen. So what happens on social media is we tend to be exposed to videos and content that reinforces our own beliefs. And we get stuck inside an echo chamber. And you're here watching this video for a reason. And the echo chamber right now is the belief that we are going to have a 4-year cycle, or we're going to hit these levels. And that's what's going to be, because that's what the data is showing us before. Okay. So for a moment, if you will, let's exercise a little bit of it. Let's be devil's advocates, if you will, and exercise some caution and say, why does this have to happen that we go up to the 100K mark by the end of the year? Might there be a scenario where we don't hit these levels, where we do not top 4-year cycle early next year? This topping in April has been my belief, but let's try to make a case for something against that. Here's my base case for something against that, and I think it goes back to unemployment. We talked about this at the start of the video. When unemployment ticked down from 4.3 to 4.1, markets went up. Overall, we are in this uptrend. So if markets are to continue doing well, we will see unemployment go down further. We will see inflation, as I showed you before, go down closer to 2%. All good things. But let's say that doesn't happen. Let's say inflation starts to tick up. Unemployment starts to tick up yet again and resume this uptrend. Well, that right there would cancel probably this break above this move, or above this above this descending channel, the upper trend line. That would probably cancel that break, and we could revisit lower numbers. where we wouldn't get to 100K by the end of this year. Here we go. I've talked about how last cycle Bitcoin got to the 100-week moving average. And if we take our fib, put it back on log, and we're just considering the bearish scenario because it's important to do, that if all of a sudden unemployment gets higher, inflation turns out to be more of a problem, one of those factors, we could see Bitcoin coming down to the lower end of this channel, maybe as low as this 100K mark, or this 100-week moving average mark, excuse me, in the 786, somewhere around 50K. 50 to 52, 53K. That's what happened last time around. Whoop. My bad. Scrolled too quickly on my Mac. Got too excited. That's what happened last time around. Bitcoin got to this 100K mark. Again, we're building a contrarian case because we don't want to get stuck in a self-fulfilling prophecy. We want to take a look at alternatives in case they happen so we can be ready. And I've talked about how that when Bitcoin was at the 100-week moving average, that was the best time to buy. Yes, we had COVID here. Sure, that could happen. Again, I'm treating this like a black swan event. Really, the best last chance to buy was between the 50 and the 200-week moving average after the mid-cycle top was already made. Now let's take a look at interest rates. I think I can layer it over. We're going to try this. I've tried this before, and I suck at it. Here we go. Let's add this one. Okay. You can kind of see it. Oh boy. So really, you can see where interest rates started to cut. It's really hard to see. I apologize. But you can see where it bottomed. It was right around the COVID bottom. We're just going to go over. We're just going to go over to the U.S. interest rates. But here's all you need to remember. Let's put these dates in our mind. It's all you got to remember. The top was in June 19, and the bottom was March 20. We know that. Middle of 2019, March 2020. U.S. interest rates. We're going to June 19, March 2020. Okay. Where's June 19? Right here. When the Fed first started cutting rates. That was the Bitcoin mid-cycle top. Where's March 2020? Right here. When the rates stopped. Now, again, at the beginning of the video, if you guys have been watching since the beginning, we talked about the 1998 style scenario. Let's go to 1998, where there was still room to run before the dot-com bubble rolled over. When they first cut in 1998, Fed did a few cuts, and they stabilized and held here. And the market went up until they cut again. And yes, the Fed raised rates again. Probably worried about inflation back then too. The market was running dang hot. It hasn't run this hot really since, well, you could say pre-2008 and also post-COVID, when there was stimulus money, $5 trillion printed out of thin air, as well as record low rates. So we've been talking about this scenario. The Fed has, for all we know, is not done cutting rates yet. So if unemployment continues to go up and the Fed's not done cutting rates, we could still go lower. This might be a fake out move. Again, we're building a contrarian case. And if that's what's going to happen, I would expect that pullbacks here would be met by buyer demand. So if that does happen, be ready for pullbacks. All because there's convergence of trend lines around this 100K mark. Again, our fib's off a log, but you remember 100K, that's where the 1618 was at. All because they converge does not mean we have to hit those. So if unemployment continues to be a problem, if the Fed continues to cut rates, I don't think we're out of the woods quite yet. We have to be open to that possibility. And if that possibility plays out, I believe that pushes the next Bitcoin peak further out into 2025. Again, we have to be open to, in case that doesn't happen. Let's say unemployment does stay low, like we just showed. If unemployment stays low and all of a sudden the Fed's like, you know what? Inflation's going down. Unemployment is actually stabilizing around 4%, high 3%. We're not going to cut rates anymore. We're going to pause and possibly raise rates again. If they do that, I would not doubt that we get the final push to the Bitcoin top earlier next year. Again, we talked about late this year, end of December into the 4-year cycle from the first peak in 2021 to March 2025. Again, I think this scenario of a top plays out, a Bitcoin top around 100K, if unemployment stays low and the Fed pauses rates. Again, we'll have a better idea in November. What is the Fed going to do in November? What's the unemployment going to be early November? I think that'll tell us a lot. And bringing it full circle to the rainbow chart, if we take a look at where we might go, again, we've talked about this pattern of how each halving, we go up a band. Again, each halving, we've hopped here to here to here to here. Okay, can't deny that. And each top, we've gone down from above this max bubble territory to the top, to the second reddish orange line to next. I'm looking at orange, higher or lower end of orange. If we have the top at the end of this year, where's that orange box? 145 to 187K. Let's go over to Bitcoin. Let's take this off log scale. We've talked about this 150K number quite a few times because that is the 2618, 155K. 3618, 207, 4236, 240. Okay. So orange box at the end of this year, you can see the beginning of it. Oop, here we go. Close enough. There we go. Perfect, actually. Orange box, 145K. But we have the light orange, or I should say the yellow, the upper end of the yellow box, right around that 1618 number. Okay, 100K. Let's move out to 4-year cycle. 4-year cycle from the first peak here. Let's say we have a top in March or April. We'll do early April. Why not? See the lower part of the orange box right at 155K. Again, that would be the 2618 at 150K. Where's the 1618? Still in that yellow box. Let's do the average. What was it again? The average from halving to next peak puts us around August. Average from halving to next peak, middle of August. Where does that put us? Middle of August. Oh, one more click. There we go. Perfect. Well, now you see the orange box would be more by the 3618. You see 175, 225. 175 to 225 would put us closer to the 3618. So the longer, I hope you guys are seeing that, the longer the top gets pushed out, the more bullish this will be. If Bitcoin only gets to the 2618 area, I've already done the math on that. That puts Bitcoin at around a 3 trillion market cap. And you guys can see that here. Bitcoin around 1.36 trillion at 69K. Let's just say 70. It's close enough. Well, 70 times 2 is 140. So double this. That would be $2.7 trillion. Again, for 140K Bitcoin would be around 2.7 trillion. Okay. So if it gets 150, 160, that goes to 3 trillion. Why does 3 trillion matter so much? Well, that's close to the market caps of the top stocks right now. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia. Microsoft, 3.11 trillion. Apple, 3.6 trillion. Nvidia, I believe that one's been doing great recently too. Yeah, 3.4. So again, if Bitcoin got around a $3 trillion market cap or 3 to 4 trillion, like those stocks, then we are looking at the 2618 to the 4236. We have 240 up here. Let's just say 4-year cycle. Let's say, you know what? All this technical analysis is nonsense. We're going to top November, December like we always do, post-halving year. Where's the orange box? 190 to 240K. Well, you guys just saw that the 3618 to the 4236, it's right up here. Now, my argument against that, I'll be surprised if that happens, but hopefully, that'd be great if it happens. My argument against that is when you draw a fib, again, the rainbow chart shows logarithmic regression. Okay, for those of you who don't know what logarithmic regression is, regress means to lessen. log scale goes up by factors of tens. All right? We can all agree on that. What this means is we have diminished returns over time. A log scale moves up high at first and then it levels out later on. So in theory, I've thought about this a lot. Would that mean Bitcoin stabilizes at a certain price? What price might that be? There's different chart arguments out there saying Bitcoin will have an average price of $1 million one day. I'm not so sure. And part of the reason I'm not so sure, again, log scale, by the way, if you want a comparison, take a look at the COVID numbers, the COVID infection numbers, 2020 and beyond. It also moved in a log scale where eventually it tapered. It went up really fast and tapered out to the right. Okay. I'm not so sure it's going to get to $1 million. And here's one reason why. You take a look at these fibs. This shows the regression in the rainbow chart. Is that you can see the 3618 to 4236. That's where Bitcoin got last time. Okay. Well, maybe some of you are thinking, your first time watchers, well, you just showed 4-year cycle, November post-halving year. That's where the rainbow chart showed in the orange box where we could go. These numbers in the 3618 to the 4236. You just showed us the rainbow chart. You showed us November, December, that the orange box put us here. That the pattern that we go in, again, from here to here to here to here, from each of these peaks, even if we go down to the orange box, puts us right around those numbers, 190 to 240. Okay, you just showed us this. Okay, that's what happened last time. Why can't that happen again? Well, let's keep going further back. When we keep going further back, you'll start to notice something. When we draw our fibs bottom on the top, each time it's gotten above that and then some. Okay, and the fib extensions, I can't remember them off the top of my head right now. I actually wasted the time to do that one day. But the fib extensions it hit gets lower each cycle. It gets lower each cycle. And so if the 3618 and 4236 were the peak last time, I am not expecting them to be the peak this time around, especially when the peak hits a lower fib extension each cycle. It got to the 3618, 4236 last time. So if that pattern continues, then we would have to look at more of the 1618 to 2618. And that is my base case, my opinion. Again, I'd be happy if it goes higher. If Bitcoin dominance hasn't tanked by that time and we are going towards 200K, I'd be happy if that happens. But again, I'm just showing what the data has shown us here. And that would lead us to believe that we're going to be more in this line, the 1618 to the 2618. And again, I think there's a lot to show us. That's where we'll get. You never know what's going to happen. And then again, we could draw a fib out to the next time. Let's say, for argument's sake, we only get to the 1618 to 2618 area. What if next time Bitcoin only gets to the 1618? Well, that's around 227K. Again, if we have diminished returns, 155K to the 227K. Again, I'm assuming that's where the top will be. Okay? You see here how 200-ish K would be around the price Bitcoin levels off. Again, I don't know. We'll see. But even if we wanted to go out further again, did I draw it way too far? Oh, God. Oh, boy. Let's zoom way out here. Let's take this on auto. Some of you are like, my God, I'm having a seizure watching this. And I'm assuming future prices. Okay, again, this is just thoughts I play with. Future crypto cycles. Let's say that's the top here, around 220K. And the bottom, I don't know, somewhere around 80K. It'd be close to the top that happened a couple cycles earlier. Where would the extensions be then? Well, the 1618 at 317, but again, we showed that there's weakness. So is Bitcoin going to level out in the mid 200,000s? Just something to consider. Again, I don't know what's going to happen, but these are just fun things to play with. Going back to where we are now. I think these are important things to consider should this trend continue so we can make informed decisions. But if that's true, if Bitcoin is to level out in the 200K area, then this might be the last best bull run until that happens, or if that were to happen. So we'll see. Let's go over just a couple more alts, miners, any others to look at. ICP. Let's take a look on the weekly. More macro. ICP still not showing a buy signal. IMX, it was showing a buy signal. I thought it was. Okay. IMX showing a buy signal. ICP, not yet. Jasmy, not quite. This old piece of junk, not yet. Let's take a look at some more miners. I have people clamoring for TeraWolf. Hey, that's got a buy signal. Challenging that recent high and the 0.5 fib. So we'll see if Bitcoin starts breaking up pretty high. I think TeraWolf can do well. What were some other ones we've talked about? Cypher, I believe a couple of you guys really liked Cypher. Yeah, you see how that 200-week moving average just spawned in? Isn't that crazy? That's just where it got to. So just spawned in, and that's where it's leveling out right there. But again, if Bitcoin starts breaking up and staying in the 70K range, I think that's going to be majorly bullish for a bunch of these. Iris Energy. Okay, that one's looking pretty good. Still playing out that buy signal, but following this trend line. What's another one I know you guys like? CleanSpark. CleanSpark. Ooh, big buy signal, man. Look at that. Now, I've heard this criticism of the buy-sell signals is, by the time these things show a buy signal, it's already missed the bottom. It's missed so much of it. I mean, my God, this thing's already gone up 20%. That sucks. Okay. Again, I talk about taking profits in a sandwich. We just want a profit sandwich. And I like to zoom way out. I mean, look for buy-sell signals, at least macro-wise, on the monthly. And you take a look at some of these buy signals. Again, you can, when the monthly starts to spawn in, you can go zoom into the weekly as well. Tends to be good times to buy. And you don't need 100% of the bottoms to the tops. You don't need 100% profits. So by the time these come in, we're looking at the profit sandwich, from here to here. You only need 80% of that profit or 80% of that sandwich. So you don't need to get the absolute bottom, the absolute top. Again, that's why I prefer a DCA strategy when the stochastic RSI and the weekly flips positive, when it's hitting these lower moving averages or areas on the Fibonacci scale, when the buy signals are confirming that's what I look for, because it's a really hard game to play. You look for accumulation. Okay, are we going sideways for a while? Here's a great indicator. Every time we get a buy signal, boom, going to be buying Link back in here. Okay, Link's starting to hit that 236, there it goes sideways. I think, great area for a Link. It's at the 200-week moving average. And all things considered, when Link's been underneath those moving averages, especially the 50 here, great time to buy. So we're underneath the 50. Going back to last cycle, when Link was under the 50, great times to buy. But look at this, mid-cycle top. When it got under the 50, that was the last good time to buy Link. Okay, we just had our mid-cycle top in March. It's under the 50. This might be the last great chance to buy a Link if it goes somewhere to 200, whatever the fibs were showing. So anyways, guys, I think I'm going to leave it there. Appreciate y'all watching. I hope Bitcoin is able to start staying above this descending channel that we've been following for 6 months. Okay, this could be the start of something great. But again, if unemployment ticks up again, then this could just be a fake out. We have to be ready for that. We have to be ready for the contrarian view. If unemployment's bad, if inflation spikes up a little bit, do not doubt that this may be another local top in this descending channel. I know that would suck. I know that's what we don't want emotionally And yet, you know what I like to say with any of our alts, if you liked buying them here, you need to love buying them here. And whatever it is you're buying, you have to have that level of conviction. If you don't love buying something here when you liked buying it here, then you shouldn't have bought to begin with. I'm going to keep saying that. So I know greed's in the market. I know people have FOMO that's starting to come back in again. Now's not the time I would buy, depending on the alts. Some of the alts actually were decent. You know, we just talked about that with Link. That's fine. You know, if you believe in the 4-year cycle and the alt season and Bitcoin dominance, if you believe in all that, that's fine. But you have to be ready. Again, you would have a competitive advantage if you just have five or so altcoins or Bitcoin miners that you just look at for 5-10 minutes every week, and you just check the simple indicators, and you're like, you know what, good time to DCA because of this and this, and that's all you need to do. If you just pay attention each week for 5 minutes, you are doing more due diligence than most people. Most retail, your friends and your family that only talk about crypto near the top, they're not paying attention every week. If you just pay attention to that handful, you are way ahead of 90% of the people out there. So now is still a good time to buy for many alts, for many miners. I truly believe that. But again, do your due diligence. Look at the buy signals, all that. Don't see any other comments coming in. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Take care.